Good morning, Year 10. I hope you're well today. Weather's turned a bit, but never mind, we're all stuck indoors anyway. We're doing another poem today. So before we go on to today's poem, I want you to do a do now. Here we are. Write down 3 quotations from Bright Star from memory. If you can't do them from memory, go back and look at the poem and write 3 of them down and try and learn them now. Better to learn them as we go along than try to learn them all in one go at the end, Year 10. And then for at least one of the quotations, do a quotation explosion to explore language and structure devices. Now, you may not remember, but a quote explosion is when you look at the language and the structure in a quote and explain the effect that it's had. So look, I've done one here for you from Bright Star. Bright Star, would I were steadfast as thou art. That's the first line. Steadfast, that word there I've focused on, has connotations. That simply means it has associations with consistency and permanence. If someone's steadfast, then they are constant and they are permanent. And it shows us that the would I were steadfast, the poet wants to be as steadfast and permanent and as focused as that star. And structure, that dash separates this sentence from the rest of the poem, giving it a special power, because really that's at the heart of that poem, Bright Star, isn't it? Bright Star, would I were as steadfast as thou art. He wants to be like the star. So that dash at the end separates that first line from the rest of the poem and sort of more or less lays out the poet's thoughts right there. So I want you to do that with another quotation from Bright Star, and I'll give you 10 minutes to do that and then go on to the next slide. Right, our learning objective today is to read and analyse Now, that's the name of the poem, Now, by Browning. So the title is Now by Browning. So I imagine you're starting to see now that these poetry lessons are very much a similar structure as we go through. So as we move forward, that should start to help. But as again to remind you, if you're struggling with these poetry lessons, just write down the parts that I tell you to write down. When we come to do the big annotation of the poem, the annotation that I've done in a few slides time, even if you don't fully understand what's going on with the poem or the annotation, annotate the poem in the way that I've done it, and then we can build on that when we get back. Okay, so today you're going to need a printout of the poem that obviously I'll attach to class charts, a pencil, and some different coloured pens or highlighters. Now, as ever, we look at the title before we start. Never forget to do that and give it some thought, because as I said before, every word in poetry, every piece of punctuation, everything has been thought about long and hard, so it's all there for a reason. There's no spare. So now, what can we work out from the title? Well, what associations do you have with the word now, as if you were doing a quote explosion on it? Connotations of being present, as in now, here and now, a moment of time, something that is instant. What do you expect the poem to be about? Well, it could be about a number of things, couldn't it? A single moment in time, appreciating the moment, wanting something urgently, and this one's a little bit of a combination of all 3 of those. So write those connotations of the title onto your copy of the poem, and when you've done that, move on to the next slide. Right, now it's time to read the poem, and then we'll look at the questions on the right hand side. But first of all, I'll read it to you, so follow along with your copy. Now, out of your whole life give but one moment, all of your life that has gone before, all to come after it, so you ignore, so you make perfect the present, condense in a rapture of rage for perfection's endowment, thought and feeling and soul and sense, merged in a moment which gives me at last you around me for once, you beneath me, above me, sure that despite of time future, time past, this tick of our lifetime's one moment you love me. How long such suspension may linger, ah, sweet, the moment eternal, just that and no more. When ecstasy's utmost we clutch at the core, while cheeks burn, arms open, eyes shut and lips meet. Wow, pretty passionate poem, that one, isn't it? So we should be starting to have some thoughts on what this poem's about now. So what is the mood of the poem? What do you think is the mood of that poem? Who is speaking? Who are they speaking to? How do they feel? Well, make some notes by the side there. The mood of this poem is, what's an adjective that could describe the mood? Well, it's passionate, isn't it? It's a very passionate poem and moment, and we've realised that the now the poet is talking about is someone who's trying to live in one wonderful moment with his lover. You know, those well, if you don't know, you will do, those intense moments when you're with someone and you just want that moment to last forever. That is what the poem is. The poet's trying to capture that moment in this poem. Who is speaking? Well, it's this chap talking to his lover. He's talking in the look. He's all out of your whole life. Give but one moment. All of your life that has gone before, all to come after it. So you ignore. So he's talking to his lover. So there we are. That answers that part. Who are they speaking to, and how do they feel? Well, very passionate, very happy, almost in kind of ecstasy. Those last two lines: when ecstasy's utmost, we clutch at the core while cheeks burn, arms open, eyes shut, and lips meet. Well, you know, that's very passionate, those last two lines, isn't it? So it's someone trying to capture that moment of being with someone that you really love, and they want it to sort of, they don't really want it to last forever. They just want to appreciate the moment while it's there and try and remember it. So now there you are. In now, this is a sort of this here is a sort of summary of what I just said on the slide before. So write this into your book. So you need a title in your books with these poems, as I said before, and then your annotated copy would be stuck next to the title with your notes in your book. So in now, Browning celebrates the idea of being present and embracing the moment. That's living in the moment, not worrying about the past or worrying about the future, just living in the right now. The speaker urges the object of his affections to act on impulse, emphasizing the idea that the future is out of our control and the past cannot be changed. Therefore, they should both be present in a moment of intimacy and not overthink the consequences of it. So as I said, it's about be here now, isn't it? You know, be in this moment with your lover. That's what this chap's talking about, and make sure you enjoy it. Don't be thinking about the future or the past. Just enjoy the moment of intimacy. So copy that paragraph into your books. I'll give you 5 minutes to do that. You don't need to write anything for this slide, but now you understand the speaker's situation and the tone of the poem, you need to read through it again, this time with pencil in hand, ready to annotate your ideas. So the tone of the poem is passionate, and the speaker is in a situation where he's with his lover and he wants to capture the moment. So any particular piece, any particular words that you think emphasize that, or pieces of structure that emphasize that. So are there words that show that he wants to live in the, well, there are. Can you identify words that show that this person wants to stay in the moment, and pieces of structure, pieces of punctuation that are helping that effect to be achieved? What can you pick out about those feelings, about how those feelings are presented? What devices does Browning use to convey his feelings? Well, I've just explained that to you. So just go through. Don't worry about the yellow and the blue boxes there. Just go through, find two pieces of language that show that he wants to live in the moment, and two pieces of structure that help emphasize that. You know, it could be, as I said, with the annotation we did at Bright Start at the beginning, you know, a piece of punctuation at the end of the line that separates that line from the rest of the poem and makes it stand out. That's an end stopped line. We've got that in our glossary at the back of our books. Or it could be enjambment. I remember, if anyone can remember what that is. That's when a line comes to an end but flows into a next line. That could create a feeling of wanting to live in the moment. So I'll give you 10 minutes to do that, Year 10. I want you to write these two paragraphs into your books. I'm going to read through them now and explain them to you. But if you were there in front of me, I'll be able to explain any misunderstandings or anything which you perfectly reasonably would have. So I want you to copy these paragraphs into your books, but before you do that, just listen to me as I read through them and explain what's going on. Now is written in the first person. The first person is just like I, and seems to be occurring in the present tense. That means it's now. It's happening now. The narrator is someone the reader can associate with and may indeed be the poet, Robert Browning. The reader has a more intimate and personal response to the poem since it seems to be written from another's personal experiences. So he's telling us passionately what happened to him, which makes it impact us more heavily than if it was the third person, where it would be they or whatever. So the use of the dashes to both separate and join the lovers. The dashes, that's a structural point that you could talk about there. The speaker wants his lover to join him in a kiss or perhaps something more, but to appreciate everything within that moment as a single entity creates a very sensual tone. Now, I wouldn't expect you to understand all of that, but write it into your books and we can go over it in detail when we get back. The poem is 14 lines in length, which there's another form that we know about that is 14 lines in length, isn't there? A sonnet, but this isn't a sonnet because it doesn't have the same rhyme scheme. Unlike a Shakespearean or Petrarchan sonnet, however, this poem does not have a strict rhyme scheme, nor does it have a sestet 6-line opening stanza or octet 8-line closing stanza. So it has none of those things. So it's not, you don't need to worry about any of that, in fact. Don't worry about that second part, that second paragraph. Don't write it in. I don't think that's something that we can do, we can talk about successfully remotely. So just leave that out. So I'll give you 10 minutes just to copy that first paragraph into your books. Okay, here are the annotations that I've done that we would be doing in the classroom together were we in the classroom together, but we're not. So I simply I'm going to go read through these and explain them to you, but what I want you to do is obviously to listen to this, but secondly to write these, annotate your poem in this way. Okay, so just do that for me, Year 10, okay? So starting at the top there, alliteration of perfect and present. Alliteration is when you have two words that or more that start with the same letter. Reflects the notion that a single moment can be flawless when appreciated properly. Exclamatory sentence, that's a sentence that has an exclamation mark at the end. Perhaps emphasises frustration that his lover seems preoccupied with the consequences of their union. So almost like at the start there is shouting at her, oh, get in the moment, you know, don't worry about anything else. Rapture, which is just extreme pleasure. And the alliteration presents the speaker's ideas about embracing and taking pleasure in the perfection of a single moment. Things don't have to last forever for them to be good, Year 10. I think that's one of the central planks of this. Imagery of clocks and time used throughout to create an image of time slowing the moment eternal. The pace towards the end of the poem increases, tick of our lifetime, to build to a crescendo of extreme pleasure and passion. Right, top left, in scale of your whole life, one moment seems menial and small. Repetition of all indicates a lack of relevance when compared to this single moment, suggesting this is where the focus should be. So don't think outside of this moment. Browning lists the human qualities that often prevent acting on impulse. The idea that these qualities can be merged into one moment means that the object of his affection can at last be his. And then the last two lines, as we've already said, it's a highly intimate moment of pleasure, ecstasy having connotations of extreme pleasure, cheeks burn, suggesting heat and passion creates a sensual tone, which highlights the speaker's impulsive nature and desire. Now, copy those and annotate your poem in exactly the way it appears on that slide. Okay, Year 10, if you do that, we'll be well placed. Well done. I'll give you 10 minutes to do that. Oh no, 15 minutes to do that. Okay, well you've got all your notes there. You've got your notes in your book, and you've got the poem annotated. But we've got to capture our key ideas so that when we come back to these poems, we know we can quickly look at our key ideas. You should be having, well, not perhaps yet, it's a little soon, but you'll start to have ideas of your own about these poems, which you need to do because you're going to, you're going to have to write about them in an exam situation. So your notes must include a reference to the speaker and their feelings and perspectives. That's the person who's speaking in the poem. And this one we decided, for example, that he is very passionate and he wants to live in the moment. You've got to select 3 quotations. They don't have to be very long. You've got to use some literary terminology, that is just things like simile, you know, this simile here, this metaphor there, this word here, this adjective there, this dash here, this comma there, you know what they meant. That's all literary terminology. And that feeds straight into points you could make about both the language and structure of the poem. And you've got to think about key themes. What's the key theme of this poem? We're looking at the love and relationships cluster, so it's all broadly to do with love and relationship. But what's this one to do with? Loss, pain, desire, longing, nature, distance, isolation, confrontation, reflection, recovery, time, change. I would say, rightly, that it's to do with desire and time. Okay, so write those notes into your books. That will take you 10 minutes. And now you just have to spend the last 5 minutes learning the 3 quotations that you chose from the poem in whatever way it is that you successfully learn quotes. And I know you successfully learn quotes because we've done it with Jekyll and Hyde and Inspector Calls. So well done. That's our 3rd poem. Make sure you get the notes into your books if nothing else. If you're not understanding much of this poetry, that's fine, but you need to get the notes and the annotations onto the poem and into your books. Anyway, thanks for your attention, and I'll speak to you tomorrow.